CYC conversion on a rad power bike. Step 1, remove the cranks. Step 2, prepare the spindle. Take apart the spindle here. We're gonna do a bottom bracket install. So here are all the spindle components. Larger bearing, drive side, smaller bearing, non-drive side. Let's see what that looks like. The next step would be to line up your controller under your bottom bracket with your wires facing the rear wheel. And then you want to take your drive side bearing and put this spacer on it. Go ahead and line up the bottom bracket. Hold it in place while you get it threaded in by hand. Make sure to put some grease on it. And the spacer will line up perfectly. And then take your non-drive side with your sensor, being careful not to break it. Similar situation. Line up the bracket, insert it, get it hand threaded. It should be smooth. Make sure not to cross thread it. It could be very easy to ruin the threads on an aluminum frame and aluminum bottom bracket. Once you've got interference, a little bit of hand pressure, go ahead and make it snug, but allow it to move a little bit just so you can adjust things. So go ahead and remove this bracket now that overarches the frame and kind of hold it in the position that you want, making sure none of the wires are getting snagged. And snug it up a little bit. Now we'll hit it with the torque wrench. And that's done. So next, go ahead and mount the support bracket to keep the motor from collapsing, and using an 8mm spanner and 3mm Allen key. Just go ahead and snug that up on both sides. So the next thing you want to do before mounting this onto the frame is you want to put a small spacer there. Zoom in so you can see that tiny spacer between the plate and the motor, and then the long screw that threads into here. And then you want to line that up with this bolt here, which you're going to run through with this spacer, and then do the same down here, adding one of these long barrel spacers, and then attaching your nuts on the back with the actual controller mounted here as well. And then you want to do the same on this side with these flat screws. They're going to go right there, 1, 2, and that'll be these bolts here. So you'll have to remove this cover. It's just 3 bolts in order to get this screw and this screw here tightened, which are 2 of the bolts holding the controller down. Alright, so once you got your bottom bracket mounted with your plates nice and secure, and this bracket here to hold it up and just in case, then you want to take your spindle, which is this thing here with the free wheel, and you want to apply some grease where the bearings are going to contact, and go ahead and insert it just like that. Next, you want to use a crank arm, so go ahead and put a crank arm on the spindle, and then over on the other side, you should see these threads here, in which case you can put on the finishing lock ring and then go ahead and torque that down. So while holding down this crank arm to keep it from spinning, you want to go ahead and put your torque wrench onto the other side using a bottom bracket tool and go ahead and snug that up as best as possible. Okay, so next you want to look at which crank arm is right and left. So this is right, so this will go here, but we will wait to install that. We'll do the left one first, because before we pop on the last crank arm there, we're going to need to do the sprockets. So yeah. So once you've got your cog alignment worked out with spacers, then you want to go ahead and put the chain onto the sprocket, so that way it's easier to mount onto here. So, and then when you're done, go ahead and put the lock ring on. So you can see the chain is mounted first. You slide this on. You know, it's a little difficult to do it because it's under tension, but once you got it, then go ahead and put your lock ring on, and your chain assembly for the motor is done. The bike chain would be, you know, fairly easy next. So we've got the lock ring on, and now the last crank arm, making sure it's aligned with the left side, and go ahead and put in your 8mm bolt and torque that down to 40 Newton meters using a torque wrench. So we've got the chain set up, we've got the rear chain to the drive also set up. You can see if I pedal, it pedals, but it also coasts. So we'll attach the face on here next. So once you've got the plate lined up, go ahead and torque it down. 2 screws. And that's that. Complete motor installation. Alright, so we got the drivetrain worked out. We got a battery plugged in here just for testing. The screen, pretty straightforward, just mounts to the handlebar. The button, same deal. Cables coming up through the frame here. And here are the ports. So, the first thing that we'll find out is that it does work. And this customer opted for no cadence sensor, only the torque sensor. So if we move the assist level up 1, we're in level 1, we'll hit throttle, and it's going. Very powerful. So, one really awesome trick for getting red plugs, 2-prong, onto a 3-prong yellow plug without the need of any soldering or cutting is to, and I'll show you, I'll disconnect this one here. So here's what you want to do. You want to take your 3-prong wire, and you want to take your 2-prong wire, and you want to cut the tab out of the 2-prong wire. What that'll let you do is it'll let you connect upside down, and then you can spin it around a quarter of a turn and another quarter of a turn. You basically get 3 combinations. Keep doing that. One of them will do nothing, one of them will give you an error, and one combination will work perfectly. And I'll show you what that looks like. So let's go ahead and plug this in like so. You can see nobody will ever know. Throttle, brake, nothing. Throttle, brake, nothing. Let's try a different combination. Okay, I just rotated the wire, so we'll give it throttle, brake, cut off, let go, continues, brake, cut off, let go, continues, brake, cut off. Good to go. And no one would ever know that the wire is rotated, but you can see the arrows do not line up. And just like that, we've got a dual motor rad power bikes. This thing has a 72 volt motor, CYC, with a huge battery, and still's got the Bafang on there that will be reconnected so that we can have dual motor capacity. So yeah, this thing is a bit of a weird bike, but I'm glad we got familiar with the CYC. So give it some throttle. Let's go up on that. Brake tails. Brake kills work great. So that's how you install the new CYC motor.